Good evening. I'm the Sleepy Doctor. This is a place where questions don't just get answered. They open doors to entire worlds of imagination. Tonight, I invite you to step into a thought experiment so strange, so catastrophic, and yet so fascinating, that once you hear it, you'll never look at the Earth in the same way again. We live on a planet that spins. Every second of every day, Earth rotates on its axis, completing a full turn every 24 hours. You don't feel it, but right now, as you listen, you are traveling at nearly 1,670 kilometers per hour if you're standing on the equator. That's faster than the speed of sound. And yet, it feels like nothing. The ground is steady, the sky calm. We are lulled into believing that Earth is still, stable, and eternal. But what if that illusion shattered? What if, right now, the Earth suddenly stopped spinning? Would we survive, even a second? Imagine this moment. You're sitting in your room, maybe sipping tea, maybe scrolling on your phone. Outside, life moves as usual. Cars pass by, trees sway gently in the wind, the sun creeps across the sky. And then, without warning, everything stops. Not you, not the air, not the oceans, just the earth beneath your feet. The ground becomes motionless. But your body, your car, your house, the oceans, and even the very air around you, they don't stop. They keep moving at the speed Earth had been spinning. 1,670 kilometers per hour at the equator. In that instant, the world transforms into chaos. Skyscrapers collapse as their foundations wrench free from the soil. Cars, trains, entire cities are thrown eastward with unimaginable force. It is as if every object on Earth has been placed on the back of a colossal truck, and that truck has slammed to an instant stop, while everything on it continues to fly forward. The air itself turns into a weapon, because while the Earth's crust stops, the atmosphere keeps spinning. That means winds of over 1,000 miles per hour suddenly rip across the surface. These aren't storms. They are invisible blades shredding everything in their path. Hurricanes today feel apocalyptic. But this would be like the entire planet becoming the inside of a jet engine. And if you think you might survive indoors, think again. Buildings would be torn apart. Windows blown in. Walls crushed. Entire cities flattened by a storm that is not a storm at all, but simply the memory of motion. This is the silent catastrophe. The instant the Earth stops spinning, the very laws of physics betray us. And yet, that's just the first second. Because after that, the true nightmare begins. The oceans. Water, like air, doesn't just stop. Imagine every drop of the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Ocean continuing to race eastward at breakneck speed. Entire coastlines vanish beneath walls of water kilometers high. The continents buckle under the assault. Low-lying countries disappear in minutes. Even mountains provide little safety when the oceans themselves have become runaway monsters. And as the waves settle, Earth's geography begins to change. In a single instant, the familiar face of Earth is gone. And humanity, if any of us remain, awakens to a planet we no longer recognize. When the Earth stops spinning, the oceans don't politely stay where they are. They surge forward, obeying inertia just like everything else on the planet. And the result is destruction on a scale no human civilization has ever faced. Picture the Atlantic Ocean. A vast body of water stretching from the coast of Africa to the shores of the Americas. Now imagine that entire ocean, suddenly breaking free from its invisible leash. The Earth's crust halts, but the ocean does not. It barrels eastward at over 1,000 miles per hour. The first thing you would see? A wall. Not of stone, not of fire, but of water, towering higher than any skyscraper, racing with the speed of a jet plane. Entire coastlines would vanish in seconds. Cities like New York, Rio de Janeiro, and Lagos would be erased almost instantly. The waves wouldn't stop at the shore. They would push hundreds of kilometers inland, flooding forests, deserts, and farmlands. Everything in their path would be swallowed. But here's the terrifying twist. It wouldn't just be one wave. The oceans would behave like water in a shaken bowl, sloshing violently from side to side. The first surge would be followed by another, then another, each just as devastating as the last. For weeks, maybe even months, the earth would be racked by these endless tsunamis. Imagine standing anywhere on the coast when it happens. The horizon darkens not because of a storm, but because the sea itself rises higher and higher, until the sky is gone. The roar is deafening. The ground shakes as the wave smashes everything in its path. Then silence before the next wave crashes down. For those who survive the initial chaos, a new horror awaits, the reshaping of the oceans themselves. Right now, the Earth's spin gives us something called the equatorial bulge. Because of centrifugal force, the oceans are pulled outward at the equator, making the Earth slightly wider in the middle than at the poles. Without rotation, that bulge disappears. The oceans begin to flow toward the poles, flooding higher latitudes and leaving the equator exposed. Entire regions that were once ocean would rise as new continents. Vast stretches of the Pacific floor would emerge, covered in strange alien landscapes, coral reefs drying in the sun, trenches exposed like scars on the face of the earth. Meanwhile, the poles would drown. Places like Canada, Russia, and Scandinavia would vanish under kilometers of water. Antarctica, too, would be swallowed, losing its icy crown as the oceans pile upon its shores. It is almost impossible to picture. A world map flipped inside out. The equator dry, the poles underwater. Cities like Singapore, Jakarta, and Nairobi stranded in arid wastelands. Northern Europe and Siberia buried beneath a new polar ocean. And with this shift comes another catastrophe, the destruction of climate as we know it. The oceans are not just water. They are engines of heat, circulating warmth around the planet. Without rotation, ocean currents collapse. The Gulf Stream, which carries warm water to Europe, vanishes. The Humboldt Current along South America's coast disappears. The entire system that balances Earth's temperatures breaks down. And so begins an age of extremes. Near the equator, where oceans retreat, heat bakes the land. With no water to absorb the sun's energy, deserts spread endlessly. Crops fail. Forests burn. Near the poles, the opposite occurs. Newly formed polar oceans absorb sunlight poorly. Winters grow darker, colder, more deadly. Ice creeps back across the land, forming glaciers that grind whatever remains of human civilization into dust. But let's return to that first moment, the day the oceans began to move. Imagine the Pacific, the largest ocean on Earth, covering more than 60 million square miles. In the first seconds after the Earth stops, the Pacific surges east, smashing into the Americas. The force is unimaginable. Mountains eroded in hours, valleys filled in minutes. The Andes, towering guardians of South America, might slow the wave, but they would not stop it. Whole countries, from Chile to Peru, would disappear beneath the onslaught. On the other side of the world, Asia would face its own destruction. The Indian Ocean would roar toward the east, crashing into Indonesia, Thailand, and India. Entire nations gone in the blink of an eye. Africa, too, would be devastated. The west coast swallowed by the Atlantic. The east coast ravaged by the Indian Ocean. There would be no safe place, no shelter from the fury of moving seas. Inland areas might think themselves safe. But rivers would rise, lakes would burst their banks, and the ground itself would quake under the shifting weight of billions of tons of water. Even mountains would not guarantee safety. The Himalayas might stand tall above the waves, but the valleys between them would drown. For humanity, survival would depend entirely on chance. A few scattered groups, perhaps in deserts or on high plateaus, might endure the first onslaught. But they would awaken to a world forever changed. And with the oceans moving, a second crisis emerges: the air we breathe. Because the oceans and the atmosphere are connected. As the seas surge, the winds follow, twisting and colliding in ways we can barely imagine. Monsoons vanish. Trade winds disappear. New weather systems form, more violent than any storm in recorded history. In this new world, every breath would carry the taste of salt, Every horizon would shimmer with the haze of evaporated seas. Rain would fall in torrents where it had never fallen before, and once lush lands would dry to cracked, barren soil. The movement of the oceans is not just destruction, it is transformation. The earth itself is remade. And yet, even this is only the beginning. For when the seas settle, when the last waves crash upon the shore, humanity will face a new and even stranger nightmare, the death of day and night as we know them. Because a motionless earth does not turn toward the sun. And that means one side of the planet will forever face daylight, while the other is locked in endless night. The Earth's spin is more than just a gentle turn. It shapes the very air we breathe. Without it, the sky itself becomes a monster. Right now, the rotation of Earth gives rise to something called the Coriolis effect. It bends winds, creates jet streams, and drives storms. It's why hurricanes spin, why trade winds blow, why the climate has its delicate balance. But if the Earth stops, the Coriolis effect disappears. Winds no longer follow graceful curves. They move in straight, brutal lines, crashing head-on into one another. The first days would be chaos. Remember, the atmosphere keeps moving even after the crust halts. That means winds of over 1,000 miles per hour tear across the surface. Cities are shredded. Forests are flattened. Oceans whipped into walls of spray. But after the first storms pass, the true transformation begins. Without rotation, the pattern of heat across Earth changes completely. One side of the planet now faces the sun without end. The other is plunged into eternal night. On the day side, the air grows scorching hot. Clouds boil into the sky, towering higher than any thunderstorm we know. Rain falls in endless torrents, then evaporates before it even touches the ground. Rivers flood, then vanish into steam. The air is thick, heavy, almost unbreathable. On the night side, the opposite horror unfolds. The air cools, then freezes. Clouds collapse into sheets of ice. Snow falls endlessly, burying landscapes beneath kilometers of frozen weight. The very oxygen in the air begins to crystallize, glittering faintly as it drifts downward. Between the two extremes lies a twilight zone, a narrow belt around the planet where day and night meet. Here, winds rage constantly as hot air from the sunlit side slams into the frozen dark. The result? Storms so vast they circle the planet endlessly, their lightning visible from space. Imagine standing in this twilight belt. Above you, the sky is a swirling battlefield of clouds. To the west, the sun burns on the horizon, never setting, never moving. To the east, darkness stretches forever, the stars frozen in place. The wind howls, carrying dust, salt, and ice in a storm without end. This belt, violent though it is, might be the only place where life could cling to existence. But survival would mean adapting to storms of unimaginable power, rains of acid-like intensity, and temperatures swinging wildly from scorching to freezing in hours. Birds would vanish first, torn from the sky. Insects, too, unable to cope with the relentless winds. Larger animals might survive longer, clinging to whatever shelter they can find. But over time, the endless storms would grind even the hardiest creatures into extinction. For humans, survival would depend on technology. Shelters buried deep underground, with systems to filter air and manage temperature. Entire cities could exist in caverns, shielded from the deadly sky above. But even then, every venture outside would be a gamble with death. The sky, once our protector, has become our executioner. And beneath it, life itself struggles to adapt to a planet where balance no longer exists. What does life look like when the rhythm of day and night is gone? On our spinning Earth, every creature is tied to the 24-hour cycle. Plants open their leaves to the sun, animals hunt by night or day. Even human bodies tick to the rhythm of light and darkness. But a motionless Earth has no such rhythm. One side burns beneath endless sunlight. The other is locked in eternal shadow. On the day side, survival is nearly impossible. The sun hangs fixed in the sky, pouring its heat onto the land without rest. Temperatures soar far beyond anything life can endure. Rivers evaporate, lakes dry, and soil bakes into cracked stone. Forests combust spontaneously, igniting wildfires that burn without pause. If any life persists, it would be twisted, hardened, and alien. Perhaps insects with heat-resistant shells. Or plants that grow underground, feeding on water stored deep in the soil, never daring to touch the surface. But most species vanish, unable to endure the relentless blaze. On the night side, the opposite fate awaits. Darkness eternal. Temperatures plummet below -100 degrees Celsius. Oceans freeze solid. Mountains vanish beneath glaciers. The silence is absolute, broken only by the crack of ice splitting under its own weight. Life here would be just as alien. Perhaps creatures burrowing deep into geothermal vents, feeding off heat from the Earth's core. Microbes clinging to cracks in the ice, surviving on faint chemical energy. But for complex life, survival would be impossible. And so, all hope lies in the twilight belt, the thin ring where day meets night. Here, temperatures are less extreme. Here, perhaps, a fragile balance could exist. Imagine an endless strip of land where the sun hovers on the horizon, never rising, never setting. The light is dim, eternal dusk. Shadows stretch forever and colors are muted, washed in orange and purple. This twilight zone could host strange new ecosystems. Plants adapted to low light, feeding on constant winds. Animals burrowed deep to escape the storms, emerging only in rare moments of calm. Rivers flowing from the day side to the night side, carrying warmth and nutrients. For humans, this is the only place to build a future. Cities clinging to the thin habitable belt, surrounded on one side by burning deserts and on the other by frozen wastelands. Life here would not be easy. Crops would struggle. Food would be scarce. But it would be life. And over generations, humans might even change. Skin darkening to withstand eternal twilight. Bodies growing shorter, stronger to endure the storms. Eyes adapting to dim light, seeing better in the half-darkness. Civilization would shrink, no longer spread across continents, but confined to a narrow ring circling the globe. Nations as we know them would vanish. Humanity would become one people, united by necessity, bound to the twilight. But even this fragile existence would face threats. Because a motionless Earth does not only reshape land, water, and sky. It reshapes the very heart of the planet. And that leads us to the next transformation. When the Earth stops spinning, it is not only the surface that changes. The planet itself becomes something new. First, the shape of Earth shifts. Right now, centrifugal force makes the Earth bulge at the equator. Without spin, that bulge vanishes. The planet becomes more spherical. Land at the equator rises while land at the poles sinks. Mountains shift. Rivers change course. The very map of Earth is rewritten. Next, the magnetic field collapses. Earth's spin drives the molten iron in its core, creating the magnetic shield that protects us from cosmic radiation. Without rotation, that dynamo falters. Slowly the shield fades, and with it our protection from the sun. Radiation floods the surface. The day side, already scorched by heat, now burns with deadly rays. Cancer rates skyrocket. DNA mutates. The night side, though cold, is not safe either. The cosmic rays pierce even the ice, poisoning what life might remain. Auroras, once a rare beauty near the poles, now blaze across the entire planet. The sky glows with eerie curtains of green, purple, and red, signs not of wonder, but of doom. Without a magnetic shield, Earth's atmosphere itself begins to erode. The solar wind strips away gases, thinning the blanket of air that makes life possible. Over centuries, the planet could lose much of its atmosphere entirely, becoming barren like Mars. And then there is gravity itself. The redistribution of oceans and land changes the balance of mass across the planet. Tectonic plates shift violently. Earthquakes rock the continents. Volcanoes erupt as pressure builds and releases unpredictably. Entire mountain ranges collapse while new ones rise. For humans, this means living on a planet that never stops shaking, never stops remaking itself. Cities would be built only to be destroyed by quakes and eruptions. Survival would be a constant battle against the restless Earth. But perhaps the strangest change of all is psychological. For millions of years, humanity has lived under the cycle of day and night. It has shaped our myths, our religions, our art, and our dreams. Without it, our minds would struggle to adapt. What does it mean to live in eternal dusk? What stories would we tell? What gods would we invent when the sun never rises or sets? The Earth that has stopped spinning is not just a planet transformed. It is an alien world, hostile and unfamiliar. A place where survival is uncertain, and where the future of humanity hangs by the thinnest of threads. And yet, the question remains, could we truly survive here? Could we adapt, evolve, and build a life on a planet that no longer turns? That is the mystery we face next. Survival. It is the instinct buried deepest within us. When the Earth stops spinning, survival becomes the only question that matters. Not politics, not borders, not wealth. Just one thought: how do we live through this? In the first days, in the smoking ruins of the catastrophe, scattered groups of humans remain alive. Some by chance hidden in mountains deep underground or at sea. Others through sheer luck, finding themselves in rare places where the first storms did not rage as fiercely, or where the oceans did not immediately consume the land. These survivors awaken to a world unrecognizable. Cities are gone. Nations are erased. The Earth itself has been remade. And in this silence, one question rises above all others. Can we rebuild? Soon it becomes clear that only one region offers hope. The twilight belt, the endless strip where night and day collide, where the sun hovers on the horizon but never rises and never sets. Here the temperature is not instantly fatal. The land is not scorched to ash, nor frozen to stone. It is still violent. Storms roar constantly, and rains fall without mercy, but compared to the blazing deserts of the day side or the frozen wastelands of the night side, this is paradise. Survival begins with migration. Across the ruins, across mountains and broken rivers, the remnants of humanity crawl toward the twilight. Entire populations stumble through deserts, across ice fields, into winds that never cease, desperate to find the fragile strip of balance. Most perish on the way, but some make it, and once they arrive, the true test begins. The first priority is shelter. On a still earth, nothing above ground can last. Winds tear away walls. Rain eats into stone. Lightning strikes relentlessly. So the survivors turn downward. They burrow into the earth, carving homes from caves, tunnels, and abandoned subway systems. Underground, the temperature is stable. Underground, the air can be filtered, the storms kept at bay. Imagine entire cities beneath the surface, chambers glowing with artificial light, crops grown under lamps powered by scavenged reactors, and humans adapting to a life without the open sky. Above ground, only ruins remain. Shattered towers, broken highways, the skeletons of a lost civilization. From time to time, expeditions are sent upward, armed groups braving the storms to scavenge metal, medicine, seeds. Some return. Many do not. But life underground continues. No survival is possible without food. On the day side, crops burn to ash. On the night side, they freeze solid. But in the twilight belt, the possibility of farming still exists. Rivers flow endlessly from the hot side to the cold. Meltwater from frozen oceans carves streams into the land. And where there is water, there is life. Survivors plant crops in sheltered valleys, covering them with protective domes. They experiment with hydroponics underground, feeding plants with nutrient solutions and bathing them in light from lamps. Animals are rarer. Most species die in the first years. Herds scatter, forests collapse, oceans are ruined. But some creatures cling on. Rats, insects, hardy birds. Humanity learns to eat what remains. Diets shrink. Meals become strange mixtures of mushrooms, algae, and scavenged protein. but hunger is held at bay. Then comes the question of energy. Without power, underground shelters suffocate. Without power, crops fail, water stagnates, air turns toxic. At first, survivors scavenge oil, coal, and gas. But those vanish quickly. The new Earth demands new energy. Nuclear power becomes salvation. Reactors, salvaged from ruins, provide heat and light. Geothermal energy, drawn from the restless Earth, becomes another lifeline. Imagine underground cities powered by glowing reactors, tunnels humming with captured heat from the planet's core. Humanity survives not because of nature, but because of science. But survival is not only physical. It is social. When billions die, when nations collapse, who decides what comes next? In the beginning, survival is tribal. Small groups, bound by blood or chance, gather together. Trust is scarce. Every stranger is a threat. Violence is common. The ruins of civilization echo with gunfire as desperate survivors fight over scraps. But over time, groups merge. Leaders rise. Rules form. Underground cities are built not by individuals but by collectives. Cooperation, once forgotten, returns, not out of kindness but necessity. Imagine a society stripped bare. No wealth, no borders, no nations. Only those who contribute survive. Farmers, engineers, doctors. These people rise to power not through money but through skill. Soldiers, too, gain importance, guarding against raids and keeping order in the narrow tunnels. Over generations, this new world hardens humanity. Children grow up without stars, without day or night, without freedom. They are born into tunnels, raised by artificial light, trained for survival. The earth above is a place of death. Underground is the only place left for life. And so, piece by piece, a new civilization grows not in sunlight but in shadow. The question then is not whether we can survive. The answer is yes. Barely. Not in the billions, not as we are now, but as fragments of a once great species. We would endure, reduced, hidden in the twilight, clinging to existence. And yet, is survival enough? Humanity is not meant to live in tunnels. We are creatures of sky and light, of stars and seasons. To survive here is to sacrifice what makes us human. And so, even as we learn to endure, a darker truth begins to emerge. Civilization itself may not survive the silence of a motionless world. Civilization is fragile. It appears permanent with its skyscrapers and satellites, its nations and networks, its endless noise and movement. But when the earth stops spinning, civilization collapses faster than anyone could imagine. The foundations of society are not stone or steel, but stability. Without it, the structure crumbles. At first there is denial. Those who survive cling to the belief that order can return. Governments broadcast emergency signals promising food and safety, but their voices fade as power grids fail. Leaders vanish into bunkers, leaving their people to fend for themselves. Armies splinter, some becoming protectors, others turning into predators. The collapse is swift, merciless, and total. Money loses all meaning. Gold cannot buy water. Stocks cannot stop the storms. The only currency is survival itself. People trade food, tools, medicine. Old hierarchies dissolve. The powerful are powerless if they cannot provide. Farmers become kings. Engineers become saints. Doctors become gods. But scarcity breeds conflict. The twilight belt is narrow and millions fight to claim it. Refugees flood from the burning day side and the frozen night side, desperate to carve out a place in the habitable strip. Borders ignite with violence. Cities in the making are torn apart before they can grow. Humanity's worst instincts rise from the ashes, fueled by fear and hunger. And yet, in the ruins, new forms of order emerge. Some communities rule with iron fists, enforcing strict laws to keep chaos at bay. Others try democracy, fragile and idealistic, but often crushed by stronger neighbors. Still others turn inward, shutting themselves off, surviving in silence. Civilization no longer exists as a global whole. It is broken into fragments, tribes, city-states, underground networks. Each is its own world with its own rules. In these early centuries, survival is brutal. Children grow up never knowing peace, only the struggle for food and safety. Technology dwindles. Factories rust. Satellites fall from the sky. Knowledge is lost as libraries burn and digital archives vanish without power. Humanity begins to forget itself. But forgetting is dangerous, because without history we repeat mistakes. Wars erupt over rivers, over farmland, over scraps of shelter. Weapons are scavenged from old arsenals, but soon those run dry, and battles are fought with spears and blades, just as they were thousands of years ago. The cycle of violence spins endlessly, even on a world that no longer does. And yet, even in this darkness, sparks of resilience remain. Some communities refuse to fall. They keep the flame of knowledge alive, preserving books, teaching children, rebuilding machines. They remember that humanity is more than survival, it is imagination, it is creation, it is hope. In hidden enclaves, scientists still dream. They study the frozen oceans, the unending storms, the fractured earth. They ask, not only how do we survive, but how do we live again? Over centuries, as generations pass, humanity begins to change. Life in the twilight belt shapes new customs, new myths. The sun, forever frozen on the horizon, becomes both God and curse. Some worship it, bowing before its eternal glow. Others fear it, seeing it as a reminder of their prison. Stories replace history. Legends replace science. The collapse of civilization is not just physical, it is cultural. We lose not only our cities but our sense of who we were. Yet collapse is not the end. From the rubble, something different begins to rise. A new civilization, born not of endless land and sky, but of tunnels and storms. It looks nothing like the world we once knew, but it is civilization all the same. Humanity survives. But survival has changed us. And as centuries turn into millennia, change becomes evolution. Life on a motionless earth adapts in strange, astonishing ways. Animals are not what they once were. In the eternal heat of the dayside, new creatures evolve, shaped by fire and drought. In the frozen darkness, others adapt to ice, glowing faintly in the night, feeding on minerals and geothermal warmth. The twilight belt becomes a laboratory of survival, where only the strangest and strongest endure. Humanity too evolves. In the eternal dusk, our bodies shift to meet the demands of this new world. Skin darkens to endure constant twilight glare. Eyes grow wider, adapted to dim light. Lungs strengthen to withstand storms and thin air. Generations of hardship sculpt a new kind of human, shorter, tougher, less fragile than their ancestors. Society transforms alongside biology. Nations no longer exist. Instead, long chains of settlements stretch around the globe, connected by roads carved through rock, by tunnels deep beneath the surface. Trade flows not across oceans but along the twilight ring. Salt from the frozen seas, metals from the mountains, mushrooms from underground farms. A strange new economy is born. And with this economy come new philosophies, new religions. Some worship the balance of twilight, seeing it as the sacred path between fire and ice. Others worship the earth itself, praying to the restless ground that shakes and burns. Still others turn their eyes outward, to the stars frozen in the night sky, dreaming of escape. Time reshapes memory. The old world becomes myth. People speak of a time when the earth turned, when day followed night, when oceans moved and forests thrived. These are fairy tales, dismissed by many, treasured by a few. The knowledge of the spinning earth survives only in fragments, preserved by scholars who are seen as dreamers or madmen. But even in this alien future, humanity cannot forget its longing for the sky. Though generations have lived and died underground, there is always the urge to rise, to see the horizon, to feel the wind. And so, against all odds, explorers return to the surface. They climb mountains, cross storms, walk into the blazing deserts and frozen darkness. Some never return. Others bring back stories of landscapes unlike anything imagined, of creatures beyond belief, of skies filled with strange auroras. The motionless Earth is a planet of wonders as much as horrors. And still, one question lingers: how long can this world sustain life at all? For a motionless Earth is not only dangerous, it is unstable. Without spin, the magnetic field weakens. Radiation seeps in. The atmosphere thins, torn away by the solar wind. Oceans freeze or evaporate. Slowly, relentlessly, the planet begins to die. It may take thousands of years or millions, but the path is set. The Earth that no longer spins is a world sliding toward extinction. And humanity must ask itself, do we go down with it? Or do we find a way to escape? Perhaps, in the distant future, survivors will turn their eyes to the stars. Perhaps they will build machines that pierce the storms, rockets that rise through the thinning sky, carrying them to other worlds. Perhaps they will leave the motionless Earth behind, abandoning the planet that gave them birth but could no longer sustain them. Or perhaps they will fail, bound forever to their prison of twilight, extinguished at last when the Earth itself falls silent. This is the final fate of a still world. Not immediate destruction, but a slow unraveling. A collapse of air, of oceans, of life itself. A planet once filled with forests and cities, reduced to rock and dust beneath a silent sky. And yet, there is a strange beauty in the thought. The Earth that stopped spinning becomes something entirely new, a world of eternal day and endless night, of twilight storms and frozen seas, of alien creatures and transformed humanity. A place of horror, yes, but also of wonder. If the Earth were to stop spinning, we would lose everything we know. But we would also discover a world beyond imagination. A world that forces us to ask what it truly means to be human. Is it survival alone? Is it memory? Is it hope? And so, the thought experiment closes with a choice. If one day our planet were to fall silent, would we cower underground, clinging to the last scraps of life? Or would we rise, adapt, transform, and seek a new future among the stars? Because in the end, the Earth's spin is not the only thing that keeps us alive. It is our curiosity, our resilience, our refusal to surrender. The planet may stop turning. But as long as we dream, humanity will not. The silence of a motionless Earth grows deeper with every passing century. In the beginning, survival is all that matters. Finding food, finding shelter, enduring the storms. But as generations live and die in the twilight, a greater truth becomes clear. This planet, once alive with movement, is now drifting slowly toward death. The sun no longer rises or sets, and yet it still burns. Its light bathes the day side in endless fire, its absence freezes the night side in eternal frost. This imbalance gnaws at the planet. Winds grow thinner, oceans sink beneath ice or boil into vapor, the atmosphere itself leaks away into space. And without the shield of Earth's spin, the magnetic field that once protected us fades, leaving our world exposed to the raw fury of the cosmos. Radiation rains down, invisible and relentless, seeping into bone and blood. Humanity adapts, but each adaptation is a reminder. The planet is no longer a home, it is a cage. From beneath the surface, people look upward and wonder. What remains of the stars? In the frozen night, they shine with piercing clarity, undimmed by clouds or city lights. They are constant now, no longer rising or setting, just hanging eternally in their places. For some, they are a comfort, silent guardians in the dark. For others, they are a taunt, endless worlds glimmering above while humanity rots below. The question grows louder with every generation. If the Earth can no longer carry us, must we leave it behind? But leaving is not simple. Rockets were once built by nations, powered by industries that no longer exist. The knowledge of spaceflight survives only in fragments, preserved by scholars who refuse to let it vanish. Old blueprints are studied by candlelight, equations are scratched onto stone, tales of journeys to the moon or Mars are passed down like myths. To most, these are stories of gods, not men. Yet to a few they are a roadmap. And so, across centuries, a dream takes shape. Perhaps humanity is not meant to die in tunnels beneath a broken world. Perhaps we are meant to rise again, to take the stars for ourselves. Slowly, painfully, the dream becomes plan. Small groups of engineers, scattered across the twilight belt, begin to build. They scavenge metals from ruined cities, fuels from the frozen depths of ancient oceans, energy from reactors that still hum deep underground. It takes decades to make progress, but the dream never dies. Humanity has forgotten much, but it remembers this: we are wanderers. The first attempts are failures. Machines explode on the launch pads, torn apart by winds, consumed by fire. Entire communities spend lifetimes preparing, only to see their hopes vanish in seconds. Yet failure does not kill the dream, it strengthens it. Each generation builds on the ashes of the last. They learn. They adapt. They try again. Meanwhile, the Earth continues to change. The twilight belt narrows as the atmosphere thins, squeezing humanity into an ever smaller strip of survival. Storms grow weaker but deadlier, now laced with radiation from the unshielded sun. Crops wither. Underground cities collapse. Populations shrink year after year. The pressure builds: leave soon or be extinguished. For those who remain, life becomes a ritual of waiting. Children grow up hearing whispers of the Exodus, the great journey to come. They are told that one day humanity will escape the earth and rise into the heavens. Some believe, others scoff. But all of them wait because they know their world is dying. And then, after centuries of struggle, the impossible happens. A machine stands ready. Not as sleek as the rockets of the old world, not as powerful, not as grand, but functional. A vessel of steel and fire, crafted in the shadows, powered by the desperation of a species on the edge of extinction. It is built not to carry many, but to carry enough. A seed, not a tree. A beginning, not an end. When the day comes, the twilight is filled with silence. Thousands gather on the surface, braving the storms to witness history. They look to the horizon, where the eternal sun glows red, where the vessel waits. The air crackles with fear, with hope, with awe. No one knows if it will succeed. No one knows if it will ever return. The engines ignite. Fire roars against the silence. The ground shakes. The vessel rises, slowly, painfully, dragging itself skyward. For a moment, it seems the earth itself refuses to let go. But then it breaks free, climbing higher, higher, until it vanishes into the endless dark. For the first time in thousands of years, humanity leaves the surface of the earth. And in that moment, everything changes. The motionless world, once prison, once tomb, becomes something else. The cradle from which we finally rise. Yet the journey is not over. Beyond the atmosphere lies the void, vast and merciless. Supplies are scarce. Engines falter. Radiation presses in from all sides. Every second is a fight for survival. But the vessel continues forward, carrying within it the most fragile, precious cargo: hope. Back on Earth, those who remain stare upward. They cannot see the ship, cannot know if it has survived. But they know what it means: escape is possible. The dream is real. And even if they never leave, even if they die in the twilight, their children's children may one day follow. The earth has stopped spinning. Civilization has collapsed. The planet itself is dying. But humanity endures, not because of what we are, but because of what we dream. As long as we look to the stars, as long as we refuse to surrender, we are never truly trapped. The vessel drifts through the void, a fragile speck against the infinite black. Inside, the passengers hold their breath, hearts pounding, minds teetering between despair and awe. They are humanity's last hope, carrying not only their own lives but the legacy of a species that has endured unimaginable catastrophe. Every flicker of a console, every vibration of the hull, is a reminder that the line between survival and oblivion is razor thin. Below them, the earth hangs silent, its surface forever altered. Oceans frozen or boiling away, continents reshaped, storms reduced to whispers. The magnetic field is gone, the atmosphere thinning, and yet the planet continues to spin no more. It is a world transformed beyond recognition, and yet it was once home. Now it is a monument to endurance, a cradle that has nurtured life through unimaginable adversity, only to demand that humanity leave it behind. The passengers know that the journey will not be easy. Space is merciless. Every moment exposes them to radiation, extreme temperatures, and the absolute vacuum of nothingness. Food is rationed, water is precious, and oxygen must be meticulously recycled. Every mistake could be fatal. Yet, despite the danger, hope burns brighter than fear. For the first time in generations, the dream of escape is real. As the vessel climbs beyond the atmosphere, Earth shrinks beneath them. They see the twilight belt stretched into a narrow ring, the only strip of life remaining. They see vast deserts baked by endless sun, glaciers creeping over the frozen night side, mountains fractured, rivers dried or redirected. From this vantage point, the fragility of their planet becomes painfully clear. Humanity had survived through ingenuity, adaptation, and sheer determination, but it was never meant to endure indefinitely on a world that no longer spins. And then, in the silence of space, they glimpse the universe as it truly is. Stars, distant and unchanging, stretch into infinity. Galaxies swirl in slow, majestic rotations, completely indifferent to the fate of a small planet. The vastness is humbling. The Earth, once everything, is now just one among countless celestial bodies, a fragile blue dot suspended in darkness. Yet even here the human spirit refuses to surrender. Scientists on board study the cosmos, mapping trajectories, calculating resources, devising ways to survive beyond the cradle of their birth planet. Engineers maintain the engines, ensuring that the fragile ship does not succumb to the unforgiving void. Children born during the journey learn to navigate by starlight, to measure time by the faint glow of distant suns, to imagine a life beyond tunnels and twilight. The months stretch into years. The vessel sails through space, and slowly humanity begins to imagine a future. Not just survival, but a life where the mistakes of the past do not dictate the future. Where the lessons learned on a motionless, dying Earth shape a species capable of thriving elsewhere. And as the Earth fades behind them, they are filled with a paradoxical sense of loss and liberation. Back on the planet below, those who remain gaze upward at the stars. They know the vessel carries the hope of humanity into the unknown. And while many will never leave, the knowledge that it is possible transforms the survivors. They organize, they learn, they adapt. Underground cities grow more sophisticated, not simply to endure, but to prepare for eventual journeys of their own. The Earth, though still motionless, becomes a laboratory for resilience, a proving ground for the generations yet to come. Time passes, centuries and millennia, and humanity spreads. Some vessels reach distant planets, establishing colonies on worlds that were once invisible points of light. Life, though altered, takes root. On frozen moons, in temperate exoplanets, in underground caves beneath alien suns, humanity finds a foothold. And yet, the memory of the motionless Earth never fades. Stories are told, passed down in song and scripture, of the planet that once spun, that once nurtured life, that became a crucible of survival. The lessons learned are profound. Civilization is fragile. Planets die. Stars burn. Nothing is permanent. But life endures when guided by curiosity, resilience, and hope. Humanity, though scarred by catastrophe, has grown stronger. They have learned that the universe is not an endless playground, but a vast arena where survival is earned, not given. And so, the motionless Earth fades into legend. It is no longer merely a planet, but a symbol. A testament to endurance against impossible odds. A reminder that life, once sparked, will seek light, even in the deepest shadow. And in the hearts of those who survive, whether on Earth, in orbit, or on distant worlds, the dream continues. To explore, to endure, to imagine, to rise. The Earth may have stopped spinning. Civilization may have collapsed. Oceans may have frozen or vanished. Storms may rage eternally. And yet, the human spirit persists, carried on wings of ingenuity and hope. One day, perhaps, humanity will look back at its motionless home not with despair, but with gratitude. For it was there, in that narrow band of twilight, that we learned to endure, to dream, to rise toward the stars. And in the vast silence of the universe, amidst stars and planets and cosmic storms, humanity whispers a promise. We will not be still. We will move. We will endure. We will reach for worlds beyond imagination. And the story of the motionless Earth, though born of catastrophe, becomes the story of a species that refused to surrender, that refused to remain trapped, that refused to die. And there you have it, the Earth that stopped spinning, a world of unimaginable destruction, endless storms, frozen oceans, and the fragile hope of humanity clinging to survival. We explored what could happen if everything we know about our planet changed in an instant. And yet, through all the chaos, one thing became clear. Humans never stopped dreaming. If you found yourself captivated, fascinated, or even a little unsettled by this journey, imagine the possibilities of what else we could explore together. This is just one story from the endless mysteries of our universe, and there's so much more waiting to be uncovered. So, if you want to continue traveling to the edge of imagination, diving into science and exploring the questions that make you wonder what's really possible, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. Every click helps keep these stories alive, and it lets me know that you want to keep discovering the impossible together. And remember, the universe doesn't stop turning, and neither should your curiosity. I'm the Sleepy Doctor, and I'll see you in the next adventure.